Your job as a parent is not to smooth the road of life for your kid. Your job is to help equip your kid so that they can handle any bump in the road.
Yes.
And that's a really tricky thing though, because like when your kid is like 6 or 8 or whatever, like probably sometimes there are some potholes that like actually would really damage them if they got into them. Right. So you need at times to figure out like when you do smooth some roads, but you can't have your entire focus just be on smoothing the roads because otherwise like they're going to go out into the world and like the road is not smooth and they have to actually be equipped to deal with that.
Hi, I'm Peavy.
Hi, I'm Jamie, and welcome to Blank is a Mother podcast. We've been best friends since college, and we're using a comparative lens to share how we're coming into our power after 40.
We aren't supposed to compare, right? Well, we all know that's not realistic.
We started this podcast when our boys were toddlers. They are growing fast, and we've been growing too.
The first few years of motherhood shook our lives and friendship like no other experience has. And by comparing and contrasting our evolution up to that point in our lives and beyond, we have discovered the strongest threads of sisterhood yet.
Listen, we don't have all the answers. We sure have made some missteps.
Follow along as we do our best to nurture our friendship and build an inclusive community while making 1,000 tiny mama decisions in an unfair world. Hi, I'm Peavy.
Hi, I'm Jamie, and welcome to Blank is a Mother podcast.
Today, we have a live recording for you. We are talking about modern parenting as a mother. All things modern parenting. We go into a lot of different directions with a bunch of different mamas. It's not just you and I this time.
I know. We talked about doing an episode live in front of an audience and with an audience to get some different perspectives. And here we are. We have mamas from all walks of life, different ages in their families, multiples in some. I think some mamas had as many as 4 kids. Some had singles like you and me. Some have twins. So we have lots of different perspectives that are part of our conversation today. It was awesome.
Yeah. And what's really cool, and I know, most people who have been following our conversations for a while already know this because we've been hype about this retreat and it was everything we thought it would be and more.
Yeah, for sure.
But, we didn't know everybody that was coming. We did want to have some of our listeners come and we did have a handful of our listeners that were there and that was amazing. But we also had, to us, complete strangers that also wanted to come to this mama retreat. And so we met them for the first time on Friday and got to know you. We had a couple of days to kind of have down resting social time, but also we did all kinds of self-love exercises that were led by facilitators. And we shed a lot of tears. We laughed a lot. We learned from each other a lot. And so by the time we recorded this episode, everyone was very comfortable with each other. We all had like an underlying mutual respect for each other and where we were all coming from in our motherhood journey. And it was just a really special conversation. Everyone brought their unique voice and their own little words of wisdom. And it was just remarkable. I mean, really, I am so proud of this group of women who came together and were so vulnerable and sharing and being so open. Everyone told stories about things that did not go so well, things where they learned some things. So this is a really awesome episode, and I'm just stoked that we pulled this off.
Yeah, and like you said, Peeve, there were even a handful of people that were like, who are Jamie and Peavy? When they got there, like it's on the agenda that we're going to record a podcast. Now, which of you are Jamie and Peavy? So there really were some new faces and new people in this space. But I will tell you all this. If you've listened to other episodes, you know that I've shared before that I've always associated crying and vulnerability with weakness. And I did more crying this weekend than I have done probably in 44 years. But it was really refreshing and cleansing. And there were just so many emotional conversations. And it was such a safe space that was created from all of the women there, from our hosts. So yeah, it was a very unique experience. And I'm glad we were able to do it together and able to bring light to the fact that parenting is not for the weak, but that everybody is going through their own struggles. And good times. Like, they're not mutually exclusive, but to be in a space where we can share the good, bad, and ugly, including some tears, like you said, some laughs, it was just a really good space to be in. So I'm excited to jump in and let them hear what the other ladies had to say.
Yeah, so therapeutic. And it was awesome to be able to be quiet and just listen. In these conversations that you and I have, we're always putting forward our experiences and our thought process and what research we've been doing. And it was just so great to just kind of put out the questions and then just listen.
We facilitated. We didn't necessarily participate the whole time. We facilitated. Shout out again to Marcy and to Amy for their Calm Mama retreat. We all had swag bags. They provided all the food. Like PV said, they had all these facilitators come in. I had never done a sound bath. That was amazing. I've never done a Thai massage where, there were feet being used. I was stretched all out. At one point, I thought, oh my gosh, my new boobies ain't gonna make it. My arms were stretched out to one side, but it was just stuff that I would have naturally not gravitated towards, I would say, or maybe that I may not have just been as open to previously that I was open to. So shout out to all the facilitators. Our yoga instructor was amazing. The sound bath instructor was amazing. Masseuse was amazing. Even we had that cacao ceremony. So we had a unique experience with that. And it was amazing. We ripped up some paper and left some stuff there that we wanted to get rid of. And then we had someone come the last day and do a journaling exercise with us. So in self-care and self-love. So thank you again to Marcy and Amy and to all of the facilitators. And again, to all the women that were in the house so that we could create what we were able to create together.
It was so therapeutic. And like what you said, cleansing and just refreshing and rejuvenating. Like I was on a bit of a high for the next couple of weeks and can't wait to do another one of these retreats again. Amy and Marcy did a fabulous job putting this together and really trusting in us too to do the podcast. Like you said, some of the ladies were like, who are you and why are you doing a podcast? What is this podcast about? So for y'all, if you want to skip the first 7.5 minutes of our conversation, we talk about how we got the podcast started and, how to find us. And we also talk about how the Calm Mama retreat started and how to find them. And then we dig in to some really touchy subjects, very challenging conversations to have with each other. And then, of course, in our unique families and communities where we all live and come from. So it was, a really, really dynamic and diverse conversation. And I think everyone coming from unique backgrounds and family units was really powerful in like the threads that we were able to weave together. And there were definitely parts where everyone agreed on things, even though our experiences were very, very different, which I thought was really interesting.
And there were times when a mama would share something and another mama would say, I don't necessarily agree with that. This is what I've seen. This is what I think has happened. So I think, to your point, Pete, there was a nice balance between finding commonality between our shared journeys and also highlighting some of the differences. But again, it's rooted in what we've seen modeled. And what we've seen modeled may not always necessarily be what we choose to do going forward. But what we've seen modeled does shape the way that we interact with our kids and our families. It was a very cool conversation, I have to say.
Yeah. And I know by the time y'all finish listening, you will have this overwhelming feeling of support, which is what we had by the end of that conversation. I mean, so much so where it was late in the day and we hadn't eaten dinner and they were like, let's keep this conversation going. Let's do this more. And we were like, well, we got to keep on going. But anyway, the point is like everyone was very, very into the conversation and we had a fabulous time.
We talk about how our cultural differences impact the way that we parent. Culture not just being race and gender, but culture being our values and perceptions and beliefs. And so we had different cultures growing up. It structures the way that we parent. So when our families came together for the first time, we struggled with some things. And we had never really had any struggles in our sisterhood before. But being new moms, trying to support each other in our new mom journeys, but also having such different parenting styles, a lot of things came to a head and we hit the first bump in our friendship that we had ever had in 20 years.
And it was hard to navigate because it wasn't just the two of us anymore.
Yeah.
It was our boys, it was our families, it was
So it's when you got the two families together, you guys were like, oh wait, I wouldn't
There was a lot going on.
It was just a lot.
There was a lot.
Okay. Yeah, we
There was
won't.
a lot going on.
We got episodes on that if you want to dig deeper, but it was a lot, and there was also a lot going on in the world.
Yeah.
COVID, social unrest,
George Floyd's murder.
the
There was
most
a lot
current
going
wave
on.
of social unrest. So
Yeah.
a lot going on, and we had a period of time where we really were not connected, and it was really killing us both. But we just didn't know how to
Navigate it.
Yeah. But it just like hit me like a ton of bricks that no matter what, that was going to be the thing that was our next parallel journey in life. And that we couldn't let anything separate us. We needed to go back to our roots and like let that unite us. So I said, I have this crazy idea. And to be clear, we were not going to have it as a podcast where we like broadcast it to the world. The idea was to just memorialize our journey and force us to connect on a regular basis and talk through some of this stuff that were really challenging conversations that we didn't necessarily want to talk about. We were like, okay, well, we got to figure this out. And then as we started thinking about it and talking through it and brainstorming, we were like, well, let's just record it. And, you know, maybe we do want to share it with the world, because initially we were just going to memorialize it for us and our boys.
Yeah.
And, you know, just so that they knew that we cared enough to really take this head on, you know? Yeah, it just became really clear. Like, if we're struggling with all this shit,
everybody else is.
We're all struggling with all this shit, you know? And then this weekend is just another illustration that that's still the thing that connects us all, no matter how different we are. We're all the same in a lot of ways and struggling with a lot of the same things.
And here we are. We're in season 2. We have recorded a lot of episodes, and we're just excited to be here. So how we got here, Amy's idea was the podcast. And then my crazy left brain was like, well, one day we should do one live and get with a group of people and talk about it. And we talk a lot about self-care, or the lack thereof as mothers, because we put everybody before ourselves. And we thought, why not find a group of women that have retreats for mothers and see if we can partner together and do it and shoot live, but also have moments of self-care. And so PB was doing a lot of research, the scientist, a lot of research on the best group to partner with. And we came upon Marcy and Amy, and there were so many synergies between the way that you all run your mama retreats and around how we feel about self-care being such a crucial part of motherhood. So we reached out and we were like, hell yeah, let's do this.
Before we start, want to give Marcy and Amy a chance to say how they started.
About Calm Mama Retreats. It started because Amy and I lived in the same city, Alameda, in California, and we were friends. She taught my kids when they were little in preschool. So we became friends. And then 2020 happened, and I bounced quick because I didn't have any family there. So it was like, where is your pod, right? Everyone had a pod. And I could have a pod with my neighbors, but it's just not the same. I was pregnant. Amy was almost pregnant. And a year after, so in 2021, she just called me up one day and she was like, you know, I need a break. I'm fucking tired. And
I think it was at your house.
Maybe.
Yeah, we were like in your garage. Like,
it could be.
Details.
the details.
We talked,
don't matter,
and,
guys.
And she was like, and there's nothing really that's for moms. And I was like, yeah, you're right. There's not really like a retreat focused on like just your average mom.
Then when I was looking it up before I contacted myself,
Yeah.
I'm like looking at retreats with moms. All that popped up was yoga retreats.
Yeah. Or homeschool parents or Christian parents. You know, it's like, it was very focused on a very small niche, and we weren't any of those. So we decided to just do it. So we did it. And here we are 2 years later, and we do day ones that are a lot more accessible for a lot of moms, because it's hard to leave for a weekend. We know. But to leave for the day, 4 hours, they can do
Doable.
Absolutely.
They can do that. We just want moms to take care of themselves as much as they take care of everybody else. And it doesn't matter if it's your kids, your siblings, your parents, your cousins, your friends. It's everybody. So it gets exhausting. And here we are all together. And it's beautiful.
Where can people find you if they're interested in signing up for a retreat or learning more about it?
Okay, so Instagram, it is calm_mama_retreats. Our website is calmluxuryretreats.com. And if you're like on the fence, what's the vibe?
Can I afford it?
Can I fit in?
Can I fit in? We can work all that out.
Yeah. And I think we try to keep it as real as possible so that if you feel like it sounds good, you're feeling right.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's who we are.
Yeah. What you see is what you get.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And we are so happy to collaborate with you on this.
Thank you for
because,
trusting us.
Yeah.
Thank you for trusting us.
Mhm.
Yes, thank you.
Clearly our mama intuition was correct.
Hell yeah.
Now, with that, Amy, we also know that you have a podcast. So do you want to just tell us quickly what that is before we jump in?
So that is called Speaking Spiritually with Amy and Felix Lee. And you can find us on anywhere you find your podcasts. You can also find us on Instagram at Speaking Spiritually _Amy_Felix. And you can find our TikTok at Speaking Spiritually 7. Felix Lee Lerma, you guys can look him up online if you want. He's a world-renowned psychic medium based out of San Francisco. I wanted to make him more accessible to people. So I wanted to spread the hope, because when you leave a session with Felix, you feel hopeful. So I wanted to kind of spread hope to the world.
So we will drop all of that information in the show notes so that people can check you out, click on your hyperlinks, and we continue to partner with amazing women in this safe space. So thank you all. Given that there's so many different moms here, so many different experiences, so many different age groups, that we would just throw out some topics, and we would love just to get some feelings on some of these questions about mommyhood. So y'all ready?
And stories.
And stories. Yes. Belonging is rooted in storytelling. So when you tell your story, that's where you find a natural place, an authentic place of connection. One of the first topics we wanted to talk about and lean into a little bit and get your opinions and your experiences is with your children exploring their bodies. At what age did your kids start exploring their bodies? How did you start having conversations with them about their bodies? And just what did that look like for you? And for the littles, what was that like? And now that you have some older kids, some 12-year-olds in the house, like what that looks like today. So that's the general question. Who wants to jump in? When did you start talking to your littles and your kids about their bodies, and have you experienced them experiencing their own bodies and what that experience has been like?
I think I definitely started talking to my kids about like their bodies and exploring their bodies when they started having sleepovers. So I'm just like, yeah, privacy is privacy. Like, you don't really need to take a bath or shower there. You can wear your bathing suit in the shower now that you're older, because my daughter was going to friends' houses, and every time they would go there, they would take a bath. And I'm just like, I'm not okay with that anymore. Like, now they need to wear a swimsuit. Like, I'm getting kind of like talking to the parents. Like, you don't want to make it seem like they feel like it's them or their family, and that's why you're being weird.
How old was this? How old were your kids when you?
Like 5, 6. I started being like, yeah, you're not going to bathe
Let it all
at
hang
other
out.
people's houses. And it's so odd. It's, I don't know what it is about my children, but I feel like every time my children go to someone's house, they get a bath.
Our children are friends, and I would never bathe my child's friend. I don't care what the fuck we did for the day. They're not taking a bath at my house. If they're older and they can take a shower on their own and they want to like clean off whatever sand or something, but otherwise, I'm like, I don't, no, not even a pool. You're going to sleep in that pool. I mean, in that pool body.
I'm like giving them with hoses, but I also will just stick them in the shower with all their bathing suits on.
Yeah,
if we have like kids over. I don't even want to bathe my own kids. So I'm not the one to bathe your kids, trust me.
I feel like my situation's pretty different. My boys are really modest, and they won't even take their clothes off in front of like my mom or like the grandma, or sometimes I don't even want to do it in front of my husband or I. And I don't know if that comes from me because I don't really talk about things with them, and maybe that's bad, but I got the advice a long time ago that said only answer the questions they ask. And I thought, oh, okay, that's easy. And my kids don't ask anything. My older two.
And what are their ages?
So they're 10, 7, and 2. And my 10 and 7-year-old, when I was pregnant, I kept thinking, okay, this is it. They're going to ask me where babies come from. They're going to want to know all about it. And them being all boys, they don't have the example of a sister that's different than them. But they never asked me. And so I never told them where babies come from. And now my 10-year-old, I'm like, well, he's going to be talking about this in school this year, but I'm going to take it as my opportunity to kind of open the discussion with him because he's very eloquent. He's very innocent as well. And I don't know what he knows. And I don't think he knows that much, but he's not going to be innocent for very long. So we need to like figure all this out. But yeah, I think I've maybe done my kids a disservice by trying to keep them in the dark.
And what about the two of them, the 10 and the 7-year-old? Do you think they like, have they shared a room?
They share a room. They bathe together.
Okay.
They bathe with their 2-year-old. Yeah, they still do.
So there's no like,
there's no awkwardness between them.
In the
there's
bath,
no
nothing?
nothing.
Not like,
they don't really care. My 2-year-old's exploring his penis now, but that's normal for a 2-year-old. He's like, oh, what's this thing? And they all went through that, but that's about it. And yeah, I need some help on that, on how to navigate that because I'm awkward about it.
Yeah, in that 2-year-old stage, when they were exploring, were you like, don't do that, or only in your room, or you just ignored it completely, or what?
Yeah, I just don't really say much. I mean, it's usually when they're in the bathtub because that's really, they don't really run around naked. I mean, when I'm potty training, I do have their pants off, for those few weeks to learn how to potty train. But I mean, I'll let him know, oh, that's where pee-pee comes from. So like, I'm trying to start talking to him about potty training because we're getting there. And so I'm trying to make him aware of that area of his body when he does touch it. So, oh, where's your pee-pee come out of? And he'll point, or where does poop come out of this? Sorry, this is a
mommy podcast, girl.
It's really weird to talk about. And then he'll point to his butt. So,
there's some great books.
I need some books.
Some good graphic books out there.
Yeah.
There's a book out there. It's written by a mother and daughter team. It's an old book. I think it came out in the 70s, and they've revised it over the years. But it's called My Body, Myself. And I think they have books for boys.
I think we have something similar.
Yeah, and there's a lot of graphics. There's a lot of pictures. There's a lot of explanation. Some of it's scientific. Some of it, is very accessible for children. It kind of goes in different stages. So, like, the very beginning of puberty and, like, what to expect. And so, like, Marcy and I would, like, read it together. So I felt like I knew what to expect long before it was happening. And so when it happened, it was like, this is awesome. It was like this whole rite of passage around, oh, my nipples are growing, or I have my first pubic hair, that kind of thing. Yeah. And it was great because I think for my mom, I would have been comfortable talking about it with my mom. I don't think she was 100% comfortable talking about it with me. And I think me changing and growing and developing made her very uncomfortable.
Yeah. I think that's why I don't talk about it with my kids, because my parents didn't talk about it with us. We just kind of figured it out as we went.
Yeah. And my mom didn't really
never.
She just handed me the book. Thank God. And I would just say, I know for myself and my kid, in my own experience, books and graphics has been really
good resource.
I would say for me, it was, my son is sensory seeking, and he masturbated early and often.
Wow.
And
when he's only 10 now,
it like dropped off a little bit. Definitely a stress response. We recognize like now it's more centered around if he's had a stressful day. But back when he started, I was like, this seems really early, and like no other parent is talking about it.
No.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because I didn't even know that kids that young could.
I didn't either.
To be honest,
What was the age when he started doing that?
like I'm talking like 2 and on.
Yeah. My daughter too.
I went to his doctor because I was just like, nobody was talking about it. I thought maybe there was something. Maybe it was just too early or too often or too, what do we do?
Yeah.
And he was just really like, yeah, it's completely normal. Don't make it a big thing, but make sure that you're communicating that's something that you do in the bathroom if you're by yourself, or that's something that's in your room if you need some alone time. Not something that we're doing at school, not something that we're doing in front of others, not something we're doing with a friend. But that's like a personal thing. There's nothing wrong with it. It's natural. Everybody does it, boys and girls. But this is the times, and it's a private thing. We've had that where now he will close his door. A little bit hard because his door doesn't lock, and his brother, I think, walks in sometimes. So we've had that conversation too with having the 2 boys about, we don't touch each other's bodies in these certain spots. Like that's not okay. They don't shower together or anything like that. I think it happened so early. I was a first time mom, and nobody had talked about it. So I was like, oh my gosh, something might be wrong with my kid. His doctor is amazing. He was like, let's check hormones. Let's just kind of see. So he just did some tests to see if he was going through any early
just because he's so big or so tall anyways. And he was like, no, I mean, this is normal. So I felt good knowing like, okay, just don't make it a big deal.
Yeah. That makes me feel better.
And tell them like, hey, this is natural. Don't make it like, that's wrong. You know, don't touch yourself or make anything negative because
You feel shame.
it's natural. And then they feel shame. And so we just are like, hey, it's no big deal. We've walked in sometimes and are just like, okay, it's fine. But
We'll come back later.
Yeah.
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 But it's kind of like giving someone privacy when they want to use the bathroom, right? It's like the same type of thing. Yeah.
So I feel that it is a natural biological instinct and expression. And I feel like just coming at it with a scientific perspective is helpful, and that this is natural. Why is my penis hard? And I've told Maximus, like, this is why, this is what happens, and that's natural and that's okay. And some people, when that happens, they're interested in touching it because it does feel good. And if you continue to touch it, you could have an orgasm. And like, I've gone through all of that with him. I've gone through all of that with my daughter. And they've had moments like when they were younger.
Age?
That's probably around 5. Probably 3 or 4, like when they were in the bath.
I need a drink.
They would
bathe together.
Yep, bathe together. And then she was, dancing and rubbing on his penis, and he'd be like, oh, that tickles, that feels so good. And so I don't want to sexualize children.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm telling them like, yeah, that does feel good, but that is your private area. And then I feel like it's a moment for consent. So like I introduced that in as well. And then I also with thinking about children and social media and children's availability of phones uncensored. I said, I want to give my children a healthy perspective on sexual relationships before a child introduces a pornographic representation of what a woman should look like and do, what a man should look like and do. So I thought like at 7, I'm going to do it. 7 years old, I'm going to do it. And then I didn't. And then about 8 rolled around and I was like, okay, I really had to build myself up, even though for all these years I had been talking about it. And we would go into the egg and the sperm, and they never asked, well, how does the sperm get there? And I was like, okay, I'm going to tell them. So I sat them down individually. I talked to Maximus about it. I went into like
Graphic details,
why people do that, trust and love, and not necessarily like you have to be married, but just trust somebody. This is what happens. This is okay. And then it's the same to my daughter as well. And I did that privately. And they both like individually are like, why are you telling me that?
Can I hire you to tell my family?
I'm arming you with knowledge.
And I told him why. I said, because I don't want children to tell you the
Something
wrong
different.
way.
Right.
To
I want you to
be
know.
in a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
Well, you know the truth.
So you're amazing. But also, how did your husband approach it?
I told him during all of the steps and that it was going to happen. And then when the sex aspect came in, he then went privately to each child and told them, if you have any questions, you can come to me too.
That's fantastic.
That's great.
Tag teamed them.
Yeah.
That's why I want to just thank you for being open, because she and I talk all the time and I'd never heard anybody get that granular so soon. And I'm fascinated by it. So thank you for
Yeah,
depends on
I
the-
think
the
there's
kid,
also
too.
like other things around puberty that are really great to talk about, right? Like I've talked to my daughter about it, and she's now a new 4th grader. And at the very end of 3rd grade, I guess there was a health class for all the 3rd grade girls to let them know that this is what a period is, right? And there were a couple girls, my daughter reported, who didn't have any idea about it and like were crying by the end of class, because you can imagine learning blood comes out of your body. Like that sounds scary.
It
That
is
sounds
fucking scary,
painful.
man.
Yes,
It is
totally.
scary.
Right. And so you want to just like equip them, right? So that they can like internalize, understand, ask questions, all the stuff. It's probably easier with a parent who can then follow up versus a group of kids. And there are girls at age, at 3rd grade, at their period. Yeah. So
Yeah, there are.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Oh, yeah,
younger
yeah,
and
yeah.
younger with all the hormones.
Like
it's not a ton, but it does happen.
what age?
Yeah.
10.
Threads of like some of the things that have been shared are how natural it is to want to explore it with another person.
So you guys talked about how it was nice that you guys went through it together. Some of the stories.
Stuff.
Yeah, siblings. And my son's an only child, and he is definitely interested in exploring his body and all the things with other kids that you can tell that the ones that he feels comfortable doing it with and the ones he doesn't. Just like peeing in the forest together, sword fights, and So I'm not saying that all of it is appropriate. Absolutely not. But like some things have come up just in this past 6 months where I'm like, oh, okay, I need to talk to him about this, and we need to have a plan. And we also just need to be aware that all the families don't feel the same about this stuff, and that is hard to navigate too. So we can have an approach in our home, but we also have to talk to him about everyone's comfortability with their bodies. And some families are not okay with running around naked like he's done since he was born.
I think we all touched on the physical part, which is really great. But I had that same discussion with my kids. Like I was like, feel the penis and I have a vagina. I was very scientific about it. And Kevin and I did the conversations together. And then when they hit 11, I was like, now it's time to touch on the mental parts of it. Right? And it was like, all the science behind it now, but what you don't understand is all the mental things that come with it, right? Like the self-judgment, or like somebody doesn't love me, or don't want to come back.
The emotional.
That's
right. I didn't think about the emotional part of it.
But thank you for sharing that, because you're right. We think about the physical, but there's a whole emotional component of that next phase.
Because that's how predators are. Like
they prey on children.
Yes.
And so I read all these articles, and it's so upsetting. Like kids committing suicide because people wake up and there's pictures of their privates, and people want to tell their parents, and their parents will never love you.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. And it's really hard. And again, we now have to tell our kids, like, if somebody tells that to them, their words here will never judge you.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh my God, that's so
because they
they're vulnerable.
It starts with video games, right? So it's video games, and nothing's ever happened to them, but it could happen. And if you're trying to pretend like it won't, or making everything happy all the time. I had to sit the boys down and said, if anybody tells you that we won't love you, or that you would shame us, or that, and if you had a moment of weakness and you did send it out, you can survive it. We will survive it as a family. They cannot blackmail you. There's nothing that they could do that could say that we would never love you.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Because people are twisted.
They really are.
So in that same conversation, we talked about the kids that were committing suicide because of this, right? And then we talked about sex is not just science; it's a very emotional thing. And there's so much more to it. And we want you to have that one day, but we want you to have it when you're mentally ready for it, prepared for it. And unfortunately, when you're younger, it's just not there. But even if it does happen, we'll always be there with you to help walk through it. But just be aware that it's more than just a pleasure, right? There's just so much that goes to it, just so intense.
Yes. Oh my God.
Yeah. And that conversation was harder than the science one.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think it's especially important to talk. The fact that you're having that conversation with your boys.
Well, I think
that takes a lot of bravery.
Thank you for sharing
because
that.
you're sharing that they have a responsibility.
My son is very triggered to negative, right? To thinking he's going to get in trouble. Right. It doesn't matter. I mean, I can be you're not even in trouble. It's the tone in which you're speaking. Yeah. And I'm but I think that I could see with video games, we've talked to them a lot about chats, and we block chats. We don't let them do Roblox, because it's such a
people get access
space of access, and there's predators, and their brains don't quite understand that there's. It's they know, but they don't know that there's bad people in the world. They haven't experienced bad people, I have a fear. My younger one is a little bit more he would say, Mom, this person would be, and I think my older one, because we've talked about the games and chats, that if it did happen, even if we've told him he wouldn't be in trouble, would ultimately be a little bit more triggered to hide stuff and not say, just based on who he is as a kid and where his brain kind of goes of always being in trouble or always feeling this way. But he's the one too that's a little bit more sex driven. So it's very it's
sensory.
It's a feeling. It's a good feeling. So we've also talked too about the stress relief side of it, because husbands often when they're feeling stressed, also want that, right? That's often when they're like, oh, I need sex to make me feel good, right? And so talking to my husband about talking about when you're stressed out, we try to seek pleasure to make us feel better, whether that's through, feeling yourself or eating a ton of sugar or, these different things that like we're already seeing exhibit of like, I'm stressed and I feel anxious inside. So I need something that makes me feel good, and talking about that side of it, and it not just being like, I need this because I want to feel good.
My oldest is 10 now. He's definitely more modest. He doesn't really change in front of anyone anymore. I mean, he will. He's not like really weird about it, but he will close the door and whatever. Him and his brother, the 8-year-old, they don't take showers together anymore. I mean, they took baths when they were little. The 8-year-old and the 4-year-old will take baths together.
Okay.
And there's always some kind of penis play.
Yeah.
They don't touch each other, but my 4-year-old is also, actually all of them were very much naked babies, running around naked all the time. The 8-year-old still, he doesn't put his hands down his pants, but if he's just standing there playing sports, doing anything, he's holding himself. Like it is over his pants and just,
we can see you.
Stop. We talk scientifically too. It's your penis, and you keep that to yourself a little bit. Like you don't need to like hold it out and show the world, but you can touch it. It's fine. In your room is better. The 4-year-old, he's not there yet. But
now LJ isn't it? He knows that it's there, and he knows that it's his penis. Which I want to add that growing up in my household, we had a cute name for everything.
Right.
So my brother had a peeker. Sorry, James. I had and still have a Susie, and so we had Susies and peekers. And honestly, and it was because my mom would say, when you go in the shower, Jay, you wash your Susie. I mean, that was what it was called. Now that I'm parenting, and I've heard from other people that said to make sure your kids know the anatomical name for their private parts, because if someone, takes the shame out of it, and God forbid something happens and they say, well, someone touched my cookies or someone touched Susie, it's for a teacher or someone wouldn't say, well, what is that? It's very direct. Someone touched my vagina. Someone touched my penis. So I've learned with LJ, we tell him vagina and penis, and we got rid of the cutesy names because my parents were more comfortable with that. I'm learning to be more comfortable with the anatomical name. In our household, we're naked, not outside, but in our household we are. And LJ has been obsessed with John's. So he's like, well, look at that. Where did that come from? So I think that's his way of exploring. He's not doing it as much with his own, but he is very much
interested.
Yeah.
My daughter, she started exploring her body probably around 2.5. And I feel like we first noticed it when she would be kind of like lying on the couch with us if we were watching something, or she's a total exhibitionist, loves being naked. As soon as she gets home, strips off all of her clothes. I personally think it's like a letting down and a letting go of having to keep it all together for 8 hours at school. And
Absolutely, that's real.
It's like, okay, I'm in my safe place. I can just take it all off, and strip it all down, and just be me, which I love, and I want that. I want my home to be that for her, for all of us.
Safe haven.
Yeah, totally. And so, but I think I noticed, and my husband was uncomfortable with it at first. He's like, he didn't really know what language to use or how to describe it, and it's just like, exactly like you were saying, this is your own private part of your body, and it does feel good to touch yourself. You can do that, but you got to do it in your own bedroom, in a private space. That's only for you to touch. And if anybody else is trying to touch you there, you need to share it with you and your dad. And you need to say no, and that it's natural and that it's normal. Like say vagina and penis, and she would see her dad naked young. We were very open, and that's how I grew up. And for a while,
right at the level.
He would even be uncomfortable with her, like in the bed naked with him. I think he just felt conflicted about it, and I would always have to remind him too, like, don't bring the adult sexuality into it, because that's not where she's at. That's right. She has no understanding. That's not coming, organically from her mind at all. This is
just another part of her body.
Exactly, it's just part of her body. And so for her, it was she noticed the difference, and she would call it a peanut. Even though we say peanuts.
A peanut.
It's peanut.
Oh, that's cute. He probably didn't appreciate
He's probably like,
that.
peanut.
For him, he came from a family that was very not much like that. You know, it was he had 2 younger sisters and an older brother, and it was like very, behind closed doors, very private. I know I myself, I started masturbating really young, like probably 4th grade. My best friend showed me how.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I started young too, but my sister showed me how. But then my mom told me you only masturbate if you have period cramps.
No, but I have a lot of shame.
What kind of witchcraft is that? What?
I would wonder if I'd get pregnant or if I would have a hard time getting pregnant because I masturbated too much. I didn't even know what was going on. I just knew it felt great. So I hope to fill some of that gap in for my own daughter.
Okay, we've talked about is we remember doing wildly inappropriate things on the playground, or with cousins.
Wildly inappropriate. Wildly.
For me, it was
holding
nap
down
time.
Gregory Chapman and making him kiss me,
I made
clearly
naked.
we did not have
kindergarten. We're getting naked together.
Parenting investment in this topic, I'm talking generational. This is not calling out any specific parents. Generational, we did not have that kind of instruction in the home or even in the
from
educational.
anywhere.
Yeah, from anywhere. Yeah. I feel like we could talk about this for a long time.
Yeah. But it's a good segue.
It's a
you want to
great
go
segue.
to the next
Yes,
question?
because this has already come up in the first topic that it certainly can be strangers that pose danger, but it also can be people that you know. And, when we grew up, sleepovers were like the fabric of our youth. How many memories do you have of having sleepovers?
Yes.
And now it is a very divisive topic.
Right.
A lot of people are not okay with having sleepovers. And now, it's not stranger danger anymore. It's strange behavior, and it all makes sense. But to me, it's kind of sad. I'm just getting into that part of parenting where my kid wants to have sleepovers both ways. He wants to go to someone's house. He wants someone to come over. And maybe it's because he's an only child and he's just so desperate for that, But my gut reaction was like, sure, yeah, that sounds great, And I have mentioned it to a couple of families, if so-and-so wants to come over, Everett would love to have someone come over. And they're like, look at me like I have 4 heads. Why would you even suggest that?
Remember you and I talked about it.
Or come over and
spend the night.
Sleepovers.
Yeah.
Yes.
We all have kids of different ages. So you've all navigated this at different times and in different ways. How do you feel personally about your kid having a sleepover or having another kid sleep over to your house and being responsible? And how do you approach it, with your kids and with the family?
When Peeve and I were talking about it, as we were thinking about this, she's like, I didn't think twice. When someone was like, hey, you want to sleep over and take care of it? She was like, yeah. And I was like, I used to be that way. And then you hear stories and now we're like, that's what started this conversation because we were even like,
I know as having a little girl, I'm totally cool with people spending the night. My daughter will not be spending the night at your home. I don't care if it's just one girl in the house and a dad or an uncle or a cousin and a brother.
Or just a mom and daughter.
No. You can come over to my house.
How do you screen the people that you allow to come to your house?
I mean, to be honest with you, she's only had really sleepovers with really close family friends and cousins, which is kind of how it was for me growing up. It was
that's a cultural thing too.
It was after the holidays, can I spend the night or can so-and-so spend the night? Usually it was me trying to spend the night somewhere else.
Get out your house.
Right. But with family, I felt like with family, there was a different level of trust there, which depending on your family and the people, maybe
we were fortunate.
We were fortunate. We were very, very fortunate. But even so, the little girl who's my daughter's very best friend, who's my husband's best friend's daughter, I wouldn't be comfortable with my daughter spending it at his house, and I trust him. There's no need.
Reagan, my middle, she's getting ready. Next weekend is her birthday party, and she wants a sleepover. We're all going to have matching PJs and spa and the whole thing. And
she's 7, right?
Yeah, she'll be 7. She invited a girl from school. So this will be the first time we're having a friend that's not from within our network. And her mom texts me, and she's like, she's so excited, really wants to go. I want her to go. She's never spent the night at someone's house other than family. And I'm nervous. And I don't even know the mom.
It's awesome that she told you.
Yes,
it is. Yes, it is.
And I told him, totally get it. right? Like we don't even know each other. I'm like, I'm happy to check in with you all night, like let you know how she's doing, right? And all of that. But I would never let my kids go somewhere if I hadn't met the parents. So to your point, like I'm excited this girl's coming. I know she'll be like, she's going to have so much fun. It's a safe place. But would I let Reagan go there? No.
Right. Makai had his first sleepover, and it was really hard because we were like, oh my God, what is like, I don't know. And he went to a soccer player's, like, it was all the boys' first sleepover. And the mom contacted me we know them because we played soccer with them for multiple years and like great family. And she was in constant contact. So that made it feel a lot better. But he was 10 and we haven't done it since. You know, it's still kind of that like fearful kind of thing.
Did he like it, just knowing that he's anxiety kind of? And
they said he didn't eat much, and he didn't like when he was ready for bed. He was ready for he was very tired, and like I think it was he wants to do it again because he also likes to be out of the house, right? Like I think
you need that autonomy.
Sometimes when you're at home, it's so much you're not doing this, you're not doing this, and then when he goes somewhere else, it's like freedom and. So
the spotlight's not on you.
Yeah, exactly. So he likes that. He's wanted to do it again. It just hasn't been there. But then our younger son is like, no, I want to sleep over. My brother had one. And we're like, ooh, not quite. Because we wanted to make sure that before he slept over, he understood too, like we have conversations about body and if a parent came in or if there was something that was uncomfortable, and we wanted him to be able to understand that. I mean, I think it's hard with them being different ages too, where we knew these one family. But another thing I wanted to bring up that I think is important is because like my husband and I have these conversations about sleepovers and just even play dates and different stuff. And there was a family that our son went with, and we both had a gut reaction like,
That's interesting. You both felt
separately. It was really big for my husband because a lot of times he doesn't want to judge. He's like really doesn't want to be judgmental. Where sometimes I'm like, no, I did not get a good feeling. Like,
what was the vibe?
I can't explain it. He felt off.
You just felt it,
and then I felt off, and I came back because he dropped him off, and I picked him up. Just play date. And I said, I felt a little, and he said, you felt weird. And I said, I did. I don't know that we'll do we haven't done another play date there since, but it was really big for him. He told our son, because he's kind of the one that's had a few of those interactions with like the parent where the kid's like, anytime, come over. And he was like, we don't really feel comfortable without knowing the parent. We're fine to get to know you, but like, we don't know you very well yet. And so we don't want a play date. We're fine to like be at a common space.
Yeah, we're not together.
If you feel comfortable with your kid coming over, like we understand if you don't, but that's kind of it. But I think that it's important to have that understanding of a gut, like your intuition and sticking with it and not feeling like, oh, I don't want to be mean to this
person. Wait, did anything happen?
Say no.
They didn't come home saying anything weird?
No.
Okay.
You don't want to keep sending them there.
No,
that's what that intuition is all about.
It was just a different feeling where we've had other play dates, tons. He goes with all his friends all the time. And it hasn't felt like that. So I think that it's important. Sometimes, though, we feel that intuition of like, and you're like, well, I don't want to be mean, or I don't want to come off rude, or like, I don't want to be judgmental.
I don't actually know.
Because you don't know.
You don't. Because you don't.
You don't want to know.
But you do.
You don't want to find out.
I kind of do.
And I thought it was really big because I think sometimes it's always mother's intuition, right, in a sense. Yeah. And sometimes the dads aren't like a part of it. It was both. And he was really like, you know what? I have this feeling and I'm going to go with that feeling. You know what I mean? I'm going to read that feeling instead of doing what I always do about like.
Good for the two of you.
Kind of doing it. But it's difficult.
It's a great quote. And it's intuition is the only unbiased information. And it's true. It's totally true.
Can you say it again, Brian, louder?
Your intuition is the only unbiased information you'll really ever get.
Oh, tell us, Molly.
Bias is like the stuff that we learn at a very young age that then might come out in a feeling of intuition, but actually could be based on like things that we were told as
But
kids.
It's still based on other information.
I'm not going to say that intuition is more biased than other sources of information. I just don't think that inherently unbiased.
I want to say your gut instinct, though.
Okay.
Gut.
I hear what you're
See
saying.
that.
I don't know though.
It may not be unbiased. I
When your
just feel
heart
like maybe
drops
you
into
can
your
trust
stomach,
it.
that's
trust it,
spirit
though.
telling you something. That's your
Maybe.
It's like
Yes.
it's like your animal
Maybe.
sense.
That could also be things like racism that you were taught by
I
your
was just
grandparents.
saying
true
that.
too.
Yeah.
That's not real intuition. That's just prejudice.
But you might view it as like a gut intuition.
Right.
Because it was something you were taught as a very little
You don't
kid.
know anything different.
Yeah.
I do have to talk about one play date that I had though. That was just I try and get this kid to come over because my kids, like all my kids, are like, please, anywhere but this house. But I'm like, okay, well, no one else will let you at their house, so everyone's coming here.
Yeah.
So this kid, I'm like, can he please come over? And he's African American. I don't know if it is the culture thing, but your guys' family lets you guys spend the night everywhere. But I'm like, can he please just come over? Like, do you want to come see my house? Like, I get it. She kind of know me from the play yard and like them being friends, but didn't really know me. So I'm like, can come
This
in,
is the mom.
see the house, whatever. And so then, but then she comes over.
Yeah, I was like, we weren't allowed to go everywhere either.
Oh, you guys didn't go. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was a cultural norm.
I was like, that's not a black thing. Yeah.
So the cultural norm for them not to go places. I feel like if it's not family.
Oh, I see.
If it's not family, right? So we're not family. So I think that's like their cultural norm. So it's really hard, like pulling teeth to get this kid to come to my house. So he comes to my house finally, but then the mom stays in the kid's bedroom with them the whole time.
Oh, wow.
The whole like 4 hour.
playing?
Yes.
Oh, goodness.
And I'm just
Cover-
like
cover
kind of like,
status.
oh my God, it's kind of annoying because I want to like, I want my kids to be occupied. That's why I want a play date, not because I want to facilitate an entire play date and visit the entire time.
She didn't stay and talk with you.
She
went
did
in
try, but I kind of just had to get the conversation. I'm just like going up, doing my dishes, coming back down, talking to her. Like,
in the bedroom.
yeah.
Is it first time mom?
She has 2 kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a couple things. I did the exact same thing that mother did.
I was going to say, I'm not mad at her actually, but I was
Because I don't know how you're going to take my child or what you're going to do with my child. And honestly, I don't feel like the gray area is worth it. So I think of when I grew up and different play dates or sleepovers I had, and everything went well and it was wonderful and I had fun. But then now being a mother, hearing about all the possibilities, all the things that could happen to my child, and it may not be the parents or the uncle or the mom. It could be like the 13-year-old brother
siblings.
or
Or his
sister.
friend.
What you're talking about is less that she stayed at your house. It more was that she was specifically in the room.
Yes.
Right? With the 2
Well, both.
8-year-olds?
Both.
Or what? Okay.
Both,
So you were just
honestly.
expecting her to drop.
Well, I expect her to come in, meet me, see the house, and then
Hang
maybe
out for a minute.
hang out for a minute, and then let me just chill while the kids play.
The thing with my house, also like how Bree feels, I can control my space.
Right.
I can
Control
control
my environment.
like my environment, what's going on in my environment's safe. So 10 kids could come over to my house and sleep over. I'm fine with that. I'm just saying I wouldn't let my kid go over because I can't control that.
You have no
space.
idea.
I don't know how. I mean, the parents, of course, we're going to put on our best suit and tie when we go out and meet people, but how are they behind closed doors? Are they kind to their child?
Well, that's just the
How they
thing.
do
It's
my
like
child.
the amount of time, the investment it takes to get to know somebody, to trust them with your kid. I can count on my one hand how many people I would let my kid go with. 5 individuals.
But we let
But
people
there are
come here.
others, like, your
Yes.
kids'
Oh,
teachers,
100%.
right? Like, there's other people that you have to have some degree of trust in.
Like when she goes to school. Or-
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
But as far as like spending the night
Right.
and the opportunity and the access that somebody would have
But
to
Amy,
my
you were talking
child.
about the daytime thing.
At daytime thing. This
Yeah.
was just a play date.
I think there's also something to be said about the kids also, because like if we're saying, oh, any kid can come to the house, as long as they're in my controlled space. And I also feel like you have to be mindful of even which children are coming to your house, because it's not just about the adults. It's not just about them tearing your shit up, but it's also that kids have learned
quality of
behaviors.
time.
And so you have to be mindful of the kids that are also at the sleepovers, because it's not just the adults that cause things to happen.
Totally.
There are
It's
other
inappropriate
kids
to, like,
that
there's
have
one
caused
kid
things to happen.
FaceTiming a boy at midnight. I'm like, that's not allowed at my house.
gosh.
I don't care if that's allowed at your house. It's not
Marcy,
allowed
you
at my
had-
house.
I just have a whole.
Yeah.
I feel like
Okay.
a very different experience than
You had so much freedom.
Well, I had a lot of freedom with my kids. So I've had all boys, and 10 and 8. We'll leave the 4-year-old over because he's not. He's not
We won't even speak of him.
So we have sleepovers often. My kids go and sleep over often. But what has happened is sports has made it so I know these parents very well. So there's a handful of kids. There's some kids that I wouldn't want to have at our house just because their behavior affects our children's behavior. And I'm
I get that.
I don't invite them over. For the day, fine. But to spend the night, no, I'm good. They can go to their house, honestly, because my kid acts better at their house than they act at their house. So their parents are like, yeah, angel. I can please let him come over here. He makes my kid act better. Right?
Makes your life easier sometimes.
And I appreciate that. And I know those parents very well. So I've been fortunate in being able to become friends with my kids' friends. It makes such a difference to be able to know. I'm very loose, chill, but I wouldn't really let my kid go spend the night at just anyone's house. I also wouldn't take anyone's kid just when I don't know them. Like my 10-year-old has a sleepover for the last 3 years for his birthday. It's like 5 to 6, maybe 7 kids.
It's a lot of boys.
It's a lot of boys, but I'm like, what's 5 more boys?
I already have 3. Yeah.
6. The 10-year-olds are easy at this point. They're like, whatever. They'll watch a movie. Think things are funny, and they kind of giggle, and they do their Sigma, and they're like... I feel very fortunate in the friendships that I've made with my kids' friends' parents. And I know it's not easy for everybody to do that. And I know if your kids don't play sports... My 10-year-old's been on with the same kids for the last 4 years.
But I'd say still be careful with those parents because it's the priests that the kids really know and the parents really know.
Yeah.
But
I
it's always who you really know.
Trust and an intuition and like
the intuition. Yeah, go with that.
I don't want to not trust anybody.
Yeah. You don't want to move through life without feeling
Right. You don't want to create that anxiety in your children.
No, and I feel like I know I have
just discernment.
I am able to understand and feel people and like. They're not going to everybody's house on the team, but like,
Yeah.
There is a sense of like, you should trust yourself. I've definitely had bad vibes with people that I like know just a little bit. And I'm like,
maybe not.
No. But yes, of course they can come hang out at our house. They're not going to spend the night. I don't know you. I don't want you to think something happened that didn't happen because you're feeling a certain type of way. Like, I don't know you like that. And that's a very vulnerable state. When your kid spends the night at someone's house. It's very vulnerable where you're trusting those parents to take care of them, right? There are people that displace their feelings and they could say anything.
And
sometimes it's real.
That was part of the intuition was I was very worried that this person was going to, has already maybe kissed my child on the cheek. He doesn't understand, he's friends with lots of people. But I think that concern too as boys, I don't want somebody also to be like, oh, well, he kissed me or he touched, you know what I mean? Like he did something to me. And that was the feeling I think that it's a strange
distrust. There was a distrust there.
But was there a kiss?
Real. I think at school she has said that she loves him. Or
I thought this was the parent.
No.
Oh, okay.
Not the kid, but I think that there's a fear there with my boys a little bit too of like, if there is somebody that is consistently maybe having drama or is like always needing to be the victim, you know them as children too. I don't want my kid to get sucked into that and that to even be something where they're having a play date and all of a sudden they're alone at somebody's house and it's like, oh,
so and so
went to school and this person kissed me when that didn't happen. You know what I mean? I don't. I'm that like uncomfortable feeling. So you do though. You feel like soccer. We know them. We've been. It's 3 years of being on the same exact team. 3 days, weekends, traveling, tournaments, and you kind of get a sense. And like you said, I think some people you would have, and some kids you're like.
Can I tell you, my mom had, Mama Beal and Papa Beal are very funny because we didn't just have sleepovers with family, but there were also, and outside of sports also, I had like neighborhood friends that I was allowed to spend the night as long as my parents were comfortable. We didn't have the same lens, right? But one of my closest friends was a guy and he lived right down the street. He would be with all the girls in his He-Man sleeping bag and he'd be there with us. And I would go into his house and I'm talking about like 12. He was like my brother, really.
But there were 2 kids, and I will not say their names, but then my mom was adamant, like,
Nope.
you were not allowed to hang out with that little girl. She's fast. That's my mom's like, she's fast and she's whatever. And she knew, and they both knew. And I'll be doggone, at that time, you're like, well, no, we're friends. And they're like, these 2 specific girls. My parents had that intuition. They said, absolutely not. You will not hang out with them. They will not come over here. You will not go over them. And sure enough, they turned out to be troublesome in high school. So yeah,
parents always know. You really look back and my mother was.
I thought they were just being overly
about
protective.
That boy. She was right about that boy.
No.
Well, there's something to it. You don't want to just judge people.
But they knew.
Because we do have that. We have that in our neighborhood. So of our 10 close-knit family that we hang all the time, like parties, Halloween, all of it. There's one family where we like the parents. My husband loves her husband, right? Like they get along, hang out, like bros. All right. The wife is nice, but there's she's very about herself, but she's very nice, but their kids are off. And so we go back and forth because my kids love to hang out with them. Every time they hang out with them, they're like, said this and made me cry. And I'm like, so what do I do? Right? My husband and I talk about it. I'm like, I enjoy spending time with their parents. We're all this network. Where it's going to come to a head where.
Do you guys say something to the girls?
Yes. And her mom will be like, I'm so sorry she said that. I'm we're really trying to work on it. And this is such a challenge, blah, blah, blah. But at what point do you be like, okay, we just can't be.
I know.
We can be friends, but we just can't have our kids together.
I have a little bit of a tricky situation in which my daughter is friends with a girl who lives right around the corner from us. So it's not next door neighbors, but it's kind of close. And I just don't really think that this girl is a great influence. And I like her parents. I actually think her parents are perfectly lovely, but
something off, right? Something
a number of things I just don't feel good about with this kid.
So what do you do?
I have not completely said oh, to my daughter, you can't hang out with this person or anything like that. I don't think there's anything
But you don't want to teach your kids to just cut people off.
Can I
either,
so the way I've talked with my daughter about it is that
nuanced. You don't want them to just throw people away either.
Yes.
And you
so
have
but they're children and they're not responsible for other people's behavior.
So what I have said to my daughter is a couple things. One is I've said, I think this particular person, everybody has different kinds of skills. And I think that this girl hasn't learned all the skills of being a good friend. And I kind of reference back the things that my daughter has said that this other girl has done. Part of being a good friend is doing this. Part of being a good friend is doing that. And I don't think this particular child, the girl, right? She's not learned that very well yet, right? And so that's what you're feeling when these things are happening. And then the other thing that I've said is, I observe when you're with this person, this is some of the stuff that you then are doing. And I don't think that that's a good influence on you. And so, I'm not going to say that you can't hang out with her at all. You're going to the same school, you have that choice. But I don't like seeing you do these things after you hang out with her. So she's not my first choice of the person that you're going to hang out with.
So just reinforcing that there's personal boundaries.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not telling her she can't hang out with this girl because actually I don't have
but just
perfect
to be
influence.
aware.
Yes,
to be aware of what she's taking on.
That's a great approach. I actually really like that approach.
I actually am on the other side of that. I have a very challenging child, and this has been really in our front view this last several months that we're noticing some parents kind of shy away from us because of our son, or my son will say, oh, I really want to hang out with my best friend. Can we have a play date? Can we have a play date? And let me just say, he's the sweetest kid, but he does have struggles. And, we struggle with him as well. There's that kid at school. I've kind of approached the mom a few times. We've talked because when we go pick up our kids, we'll chat. We know our kids are friends. And I'll say, oh, what are you guys up to this weekend? Do you want to try play date? Oh, we're just really busy. And then right before summer, oh, we should get together this summer. Oh, we're so busy. All summer. And I'm like, okay, I get it. And the thing is, as that parent, I understand that. And I understand that they may think he's a bad influence and it's hurtful for us, but I also understand it. And that's just the reality of our lives with a challenging child is we're going to lose some friendships. And unfortunately, his older brother may lose some friendships because of the siblings. They have a lot of sibling friends. And so I really like how you're teaching your child. And, you know, telling her things about that as well, because I don't think the kids really see that as much, but it's the parents that are having the perception. This is my second child. She may think they get in trouble together sometimes, but they're kids. Of course, they're going to get in trouble at school sometimes. But to her, he's a bad influence, and he's really not that bad. You know,
I've been direct a couple of times to the parents about things that I have observed.
Yeah.
But I probably have not
totally
been as like 100% honest. Like, I think if they were to come to me and say like, oh, we notice your daughter and blah, 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 maybe I would say a little bit more. But I think I have a couple of times said like, just FYI, this happened. And I think my kid is having a hard time when your kid does X, Y, Z thing.
This parent,
because that has happened.
This parent has come to me a few times. Oh, they got in trouble at school together because of this or that. And you have to be mature about it. And you have to discuss with the parent. And the nature of it is sometimes those friendships aren't going to work. And if there's certain parents that just don't mesh or the kids don't mesh, that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it can be hurtful, but it's also okay.
Yeah. What's really tricky is I noticed with this other child is that she has a very domineering personality. And so when my daughter sometimes says like, I don't want to do this, the other girl just basically keeps hounding her. And I think my daughter gets to a point where she no longer listens to her own self because this other, so sometimes I will actually kind of like stand up to the 10-year-old to say like, no, I think Eloise is saying she doesn't want to do da 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 da.
Yeah.
But it's when you see it happen over and over and over, and actually this child is that way to like the parents even like, can I have this? 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 Like constantly like kind of pushing the boundaries of everything. It's like tricky, you know? It's
I feel like I can relate to that a little bit, kind of like what you were saying. My daughter is particularly independent and driven and very clear about what she wants to do. And so sometimes when there's friends over or we're having a play date, I do have to gently remind her, like, so-and-so's coming over to your house. She's your guest. You know, be a good hostess. Maybe ask her what she wants to do. Or you guys do what you want to do for 10 minutes and then it's her turn to decide.
Yeah. I think
It's tough. It is
big
tough.
picture, we want so badly as parents to curate every situation and to protect our children from everything, including just like the mean girl next door. You know, I'm exaggerating, but like the truth is in life, you're going to encounter challenging people. And we also have to teach our kids that they need to be able to move throughout the world with
100%.
lots of different personalities.
Yes, totally. Yeah.
Just like we in our office, like Steve up the lane, you know, he's got Asperger's and he says some weird shit sometimes, you know, like you just have to understand that his brain works differently. And so his filter's not there, you know, this is a fictional person. Totally fictional.
Yeah, they're not real.
I'm just saying. Yeah.
Spectrum, and when he's around, I have to remind Maya.
Yes. And I am very relating to what you're saying, Rachel, because Everett's a lot. He is a wonderful kid. Not the best influence, I know, all the time on his peers because he is behind in his social emotional education. You know, his development is just behind. And so it is hard and it does affect my community and my support network and like the friends I'm able to make or we are able to make as a family. And that is really like, I have to grieve that because it is sad. But I also have to like believe in my kid and not give up on him and know like you're going to get there. You're going to find your people who aren't going to think you're too much, who are going to be able to love like the best parts of you and be able to handle your weaknesses because we all have them. Everyone has weaknesses. And the people who can find those lovable parts of you are like your true people. So you don't want to raise your child to only love those perfect kids. Like we were talking earlier, like it's rewarded that behavior of just, oh, that's the quiet kid. Oh, always so polite, never speaks their mind, you know, never has an opinion. Like that's great.
Funny, like the qualities that we prize most in kids are actually qualities we don't want
in adults.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's absolutely true.
I have to remind myself of that of Everett all the time. Like these things that are so frustrating as parents and as peers. And I'm sure other parents interacting with him and his teachers. Oh my gosh, his poor teachers. But I don't want to stifle that out of him because those are going to be his superpowers when he's an adult.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, it's all hard. There's no right or wrong.
Parenting is not for the weak.
Our kids to trust their intuition too, because like the twins had a boy at school, and like all the teachers have always told me, like, your kids are so great with any kid with special needs. Like they just really click. They always get along. And they were in kindergarten, and this mom came up to me, and she literally like just hugging me, bawling, crying, and I was like, "What's going on? This is Peter Piper. Everybody's supposed to be happy."
Peter Piper's a pizza place in Arizona.
It's like Chuck E. Cheese. I realized that her son that my kids invited, like he had never been invited to a birthday party. So
it's a big deal.
Yes, they were, and like her mom was like, "Nobody ever invites my son. Like it's been so hard, and like he's never made friends. He's like all preschool, they couldn't make friends, like, and he's like come out of his shell now, and he's like talking to everybody, right?" So I think that there's those things like every kid's different. They're gonna find their people, right?
And let me be clear, Maxine wasn't saying don't hang out with that kid because they have different behavioral stuff. Because Lord knows I was a loudmouth, I was sassy, and I was probably the little girl that was like, no, we're going to do this today. So it wasn't because of anything related to that, but there was something about a disconnect between what was considered appropriate behavior for my parents that was outside of what was considered appropriate behavior in those households. Yeah. So to your point, there was intuition, but it wasn't just based on the kids being different. It was based off of family stuff
it's more
as
than
well.
that. It's like all together.
Yep.
Just feel it.
Yes.
So, looking really nice on the surface and checking all the boxes, but something's not there.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, all this wouldn't be happening.
Yeah.
PV, can I just offer one? I once heard somebody, and I'm not going to get the quote entirely right, but that your job as a parent is not to smooth the road of life for your kid. Your job is to help equip your kid so that they can handle any bump in the road.
Yes.
And that's a really tricky thing though, because like when your kid is like 6 or 8 or whatever, like probably sometimes there are some potholes that like actually would really damage them if they got into them. Right. So you need at times to figure out like when you do smooth some roads, but you can't have your entire focus just be on smoothing the roads because otherwise like they're going to go out into the world and like the road is not smooth and they have to actually be equipped to deal with that. Right.
You may be setting them up for failure.
Very totally. So like I still let my kids hang out, but they have made that decision themselves.
You've empowered them to make that choice for themselves at the age that they are, right? Yeah.
They know the difference.
Yeah. This is some opaque shit, guys. Like we thank you for sharing all your stories and
clear as mud.
Approach it. Yeah.
You know, and how to approach it. Yeah. We talk a lot about community and being like a part of raising a child. I know it takes a village, but when you have people in your family who have opinions about the way you are parenting or the way that you should be parenting, I'm curious just to get a couple opinions on how you navigate those roads. You want to build a sense of community and you want people to be around your child. And there are people that may have strong opinions about your parenting styles. How do you navigate that?
Book Parenting with Love and Logic. It talks about the 4 types of parents. And like my mom sees something like, she's getting better now, but she used to be like, if your child back talks to you, if he says this, or if they question you, like a child should do what you're supposed to do. And then I told my mom about this book, The Parenting with Love and Logic. And I said, well, they have this thing they call the military parent, and their prized child is the one who does everything they're told to do, right? Like you don't step out of line, like you behave, you're great, right? But that's the same child that as soon as somebody in high school says, try this job.
Right. You're going to do it.
I'll do it because I do what I'm told.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
It's like exactly the kind of qualities you don't want in an adult.
Yeah.
Right. Like you were saying.
And so I was like, so at times, like, does it suck that my child questions me on everything?
Yes.
You can drop those F-bombs, girl. It's okay.
Yes. It absolutely sucks. And then there's other things where it's like, she overpraises them sometimes, and I try to tell her not to give them like generic praising, right? Because the boys are gifted, and they oftentimes get, oh, they're so smart, they're so smart, they're so smart. And I have to come back around and tell them, like, listen, we are number 59 on the state for education, so this is a great test, but like we're at the bottom. Arizona is at the bottom, right? And I was like, do not set this as your baseline. Right? And just kind of try to remind my mom to like not to praise them, but to praise their actions. Right? Like, not you're so smart, like you work so hard and you've done so much to get this right.
Oh, that's good.
Which I think is important to set boundaries with family, right? That they're not parenting your child. And I also had a difficult child, lots of fits as a child. And we were I will never forget it. We were in Lake Tahoe. It was 4th of July weekend. we were at dinner and my son knocked over the water. He was already having a rough day, already out of his element. My oldest one. Okay. Already out of his element, had already like not slept. It just was like a recipe for disaster. And he knocked over the water, had a massive tantrum, hit my husband. My husband put him down, bolted, like down the street. Eloped. He ran. He was gone. And I was like, oh my God. My husband's parents were very much like, he would never do that. I would beat him if he ever stayed with me.
That's what I mean.
I would spank his ass.
That's so true.
And I sat there.
That ain't it.
And my husband and I had to have very big discussions about boundaries. And I said, my son will never spend the night with them again. Hard conversations to have. But like that's a boundary that I'm going to set because this person is not parenting my child in the same way
he needs to be parented.
And that's not going to be, I'm not going to put my child in danger.
The traditional way of parenting doesn't work for really any kid, but especially kids like your older son and my middle son, the strong-willed kid, the neurodivergence. And I've been learning that recently. And I've also been shrugging off the judgment. Like I used to spiral when people, strangers, family members, friends would judge our parenting or our kids out in public. And it's been super freeing. I had my son throw mulch at me and scream in the middle of the playground. And this was the first time that I couldn't give a damn about what other people thought.
Good for you.
And it was so freeing. I mean, there were people staring at us and I'm like, used to, I would like spiral for days, weeks about some judgment from some other person and a lot of family members as well. But, you just can't let that.
They don't know what you're going through.
They don't know what you're going through. They don't understand that these kids do not. I mean, I was a neurotypical kid, kind of. But
what's typical?
Exactly. But
What'd you say, tomato?
I didn't respond well to traditional parenting. I have trauma from the way I was parented. Everyone does. But, some more than others. And it did not work. The very strong-armed, that does not work. And it may look like I'm not parenting or that I'm permissive parenting, but I promise you I'm not.
I can so relate.
Sawyer's the type of boy, I feel like I was his teacher, so it's just like you just need to know how to deal with him. And it's like, don't aggravate it. Don't push. Don't push
harder.
it. Just let
the harder you push, the harder he pushes back.
Yeah.
You have to kind of go roundabout. And it's very a dance.
I had to throw that one in there because I thought that's a good way to end. When you're saying build community, but you have people in your community that may not agree with what you're doing and saying. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Thank you all so much for participating.
Thank you all so much for listening.
And we would love your feedback. We're sharing our stories. The mamas were sharing theirs, but we also want to hear your unique stories and your feedback. So please share with us your thoughts, good, bad, and ugly.
We would love to have a review of our podcast, please, on any of the platforms that you find us. Those reviews will help other mamas and other women become part of our community. And that's what we're here for. So please leave a review if you have the time. Also wanted to thank one of our sponsors that we were able to add to the swag bag, which was Muna Coffee. She is a mama, a person of color, a woman-owned business. And the coffee is awesome. So we have a discount code for all of our listeners. Is a mother, we'll get you 10% off. So we'll drop the Muna Coffee links in the show notes as well. So you can pop over and get you some coffee with a 10% discount.
Yes. And we should also share, and we'll drop this in the show notes, but I just saw this on my desk as a reminder that Well Maine was one of the vendors that Marcy and Amy had that provided some stuff in our swag bag also for some hair care products that can go with any texture hair. So I haven't had a chance to use them yet, but I know that Jessie did, and she said they were phenomenal. So we'll drop all of the vendor information in our show notes as well.
Thank you all so much. We love you.
Go call your best friend. Thank you for listening.
Love you, Jay.
Love you, Peeve.
Thank you so much for listening and being part of our conversation and our inner circle.
Follow us on Instagram _It's a Mother Podcast. And we look forward to you and your best friends joining us next episode.
Leave a rating on this podcast app. It really helps us get our conversations to more friends out there, more friendship circles, and more women and more mothers. And that's what we're here for, to broaden the conversation, to bring everybody into the circle.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us. We'll talk to you soon.
Go call your best friend.